You know me.
Again, good morning to those people who are not from here, and welcome to those people, and hi to those people who live here in this county. And I see a few people that I know who live in this county. We want to just take a moment to do a little housekeeping. There's for ladies, Miss Winifred is up the hill and indicated that if you need the comfort zone, that there's a facility available for you guys. We have a potty john down on the back of the house, so you can use that as well, because the reception will be up the hill, once we finish with our formal program. Again, good morning, good afternoon. It is still morning, feels like afternoon, but good morning to everybody. We also have some books that called the Voices from the Hill Country Project, and some of you have bought those books. Others have bought them. Some have now got them autographs. If you got books and you have not had them autographed, then we do have the authors and the co-authors here present today. So please flag them and get them to sign your book before you leave. We also have bought some postcards for those people who have not purchased the book, Voices from the Hill Country Project, that features so many of these great people from Benton County. You can just simply go to our website at www.hillcountryproject.org and purchase a book, and they'll send that book directly from the University Press of Mississippi, and they'll send it to your home. The price of the paperback book is only $25. If you want a hard copy, I think it's a little bit more. Well, we want to thank Ms. Winifred Reaves for letting us use her ground, and I see the son is here for the reception. We just appreciate that. And we also want to say we offer special thanks to all those churches who stepped up and contributed funds to help defray the cost of our little light reception afterwards. I cannot begin to thank all the individuals that are here, because there's so many individuals here. Some of you I know, some of you I don't know, so all of you are welcome, and we thank you all for whatever you've done. I want to thank specifically my good friend here, Alexander, who, it's a little story I want to tell for a second. John and I was out here sort of scouting out a spot where we wanted to put this marker, and Alexander came up to us in a very nice way. What are y'all looking for? So that's a good thing. I think that's a good thing. And after that, then I recruited him to help me get this thing organized. And he cut the grass for us, even though it's been raining. So I want to thank him for that. What I want to do now is, if there are clergy in the house, would you just please raise your hand and be recognized? If there are elected officials in the house, please raise your hand and be recognized. If there are appointed officials in the house, I see the superintendent is here, assistant principals here, be recognized. Former mayors here, we might have others that are around. So again, I want all the elected officials who are here to be recognized, all appointed officials to be recognized, all church clergy to be recognized, and we recognize all of you because all of you are very important. Okay. I also want to thank, again, the people from the Mississippi Humanities Council, the people from Visit Mississippi, the people from Southern Law Poverty Center, and of course the Hill Country Project for helping to sponsor this event. Four of my board members are here with the Hill Country Project, Ms. Sharon back there, Aviva, John, and Stephen. So again, we want to thank them for everything that they do and preparing this. The other person I want to thank is Miss Rosa Evans, who stepped up and will be Reaves, who stepped up and will be preparing the refreshments for us immediately after our formal festivities this morning. So again, thank to all of you for coming out. I do want to make a change a little bit on the program. You see that Aviva Victorian is first on the program. She pulled executive privilege on me, which I immediately recognized and said she wanted to go last rather than first, so we're going to reverse order. And so the first person up is probably going to be Miss L.A. Reaves Stewart. All right. Miss Stewart. Let's give her a hand. And she's going to come and just
to everybody. Those that I know and those that I don't know. And I would like to know all, I like to know everybody. Leatrice told me they want you and Aviva to speak on Uncle Henry. And I'm sure everybody here knew Henry Reaves. He did a lot of things. Before this came about, Uncle Henry was Uncle Henry. That's right. And he worked then. He worked before then. He worked because he was everywhere. We'd be at home and wouldn't be expecting Uncle Henry, and Uncle Henry knocking on the door. And Uncle Henry did a lot of things, and I can't say everything that he did, but he did a lot of things. First of all, we got a beaver here in Benton County. She didn't have time to go to all the places that she goes to now when she was coming in Benton County, because all her town was in Benton County. And you,
I'm just kidding.
That's all right. You were one too. You were one too. Uncle Henry, we had meetings at, I guess, almost every church in Benton County. And Uncle Henry was there with all of them. He was the chair of the meeting, and of course I was the secretary. And I enjoyed what I was doing. And it's a lot of things that can be said about Uncle Henry, and I'm sure a lot of folks knew Henry Reaves. His wife taught down in Mississippi, and he went down there. I don't think it went so good for him down there. They wanted to run him away. They wanted to run him away from everywhere because he stood up for what he believed in. And I'm telling you the truth, this group today has to do with part of what went on with Henry Reaves. Because he wasn't going to sit back and let nothing happen. He was going to get out and fix Benton County so we wouldn't have to do all the struggling and all the things that we were doing back then. Because I tell you, the first homecoming or family reunion that we had was held right up here by this tree in the yard, in up here in the yard. And I guess almost all of the Reaves family was there. A lot of them are gone now, but in that book that's out, that Aviva and Roy and everybody worked on, all of that's in that book.
Right.
I haven't read all of it, but I've read a lot of it. And I tell you, if you listen, there's nothing wrong in that book. Everything in that book is true. And I think even now, there are a lot of other things that could be said about Uncle Henry. Because Uncle Henry did not play. He didn't play. He went to a lot of places. And this picture here is him at the National Head Start Conference in Washington, D.C. He and Miss Fannie Lou Hamer. And it's a lot of things that could be said about Uncle Henry. And I would take me too long to say everything that I know. But I'm sure everybody that's here and everybody, some that's not here, and will probably not ever be around a group like this, was acquainted with Henry Reaves. Because what he felt, he said it. He didn't wait for somebody else to tell him. He said what he wanted to say. And that was white or black. But, thank the Lord for him. Amen. And everybody give Uncle Henry a big hand. Please, everybody.
Good morning, y'all.
Good morning.
When I think of the memories that I have of my grandfather, I remember being in his pickup truck, him taking me to Piggly Wiggly, and he would get his favorite. He would get we'd get a donut and chocolate milk. We'll eat it right there from Piggly Wiggly. I remember being at the table with him. One of his favorite meals would be buttermilk and cornbread. My grandma made the best. My grandma, Miss Reaves, made the best cornbread in the world. And we'll sit there and we'll eat. If I think of the story, one of the stories that sticks out in the mind, of my grandfather, as far as his accolades and the things, that he's done, I mean, it was absolutely amazing to, be a civil rights leader in Mississippi in 1964 when they murdered Medgar Evers, they murdered Martin Luther King Jr., they murdered almost every black person who was brave enough to stand up and talk. And, even as I get older, and stuff gets unveiled, you find out that the Mississippi State Sovereignty Commission was investigating him, the FBI was looking at him, and things like that. So it's very deep, and it's a very courageous man, and I definitely stand on the shoulders of giants. And so, but one of the biggest stories that I remember is, my father, it said one day that he got woken up in the night. He was probably 7, 8 years old, somewhere around there, maybe a little bit older. He got woken up in the night. My grandpa said, "Go fetch some water, sonny. The barn is on fire. Go fetch some water." And so he ran as fast as his little legs would take him, and he went to go fetch the water. And then when he got out to the front, he noticed that my grandpa, he had stopped. The urgency had left. He wasn't urgent. And, what my grandpa said was, turns out it wasn't the barn. It was just crosses that were being burned in his yard. And so my grandpa took that water, poured that bucket out, and went back to sleep. Because when he thought that what he was, running and fighting for was the barn, the thing that can keep us going, that economic engine, that motor, that basis of power, when he thought that that's what was on fire, he had a tremendous amount of urgency. But then when he found out that that fire was just simply hate, or people who were just ignorant, who just didn't understand or had fear, he threw the bucket down because it wasn't worth, the bucket of water. And so that's one of the strong memories that I have. And so the biggest thing that I do now that I want to do is I just want to make sure that I can carry that namesake and see, can we take it to the next level? So the question that we have to ask at this point is, have we arrived? Are we done yet?
Mm.
Have we reached that promised land?
No.
And, my thing is simply, are we free? And so the question now is, say, are we free? Which is an odd question to ask because, I went to college, I became successful, I've been a lawyer, I've been in the hills of Monte Carlo and Budapest and, Asia and all these different places, and I've had all the things that money can buy, and I've sat courtside and stuff like that. So it seems crazy to ask the question of, are we free, when we're so much more than, what we had before? So I want to go ahead and alleviate that for you, and I'll let you decide if we're free or not. It's going to be a simple 4-part test that I ask you. As a people, do we control our vote? And I'm going to tell you the reason why it's no is because there's something that's called the electoral map. So it's the state of Mississippi that decides to divide up the country how they want to. So they can look at all them black folks in Jackson and they can cut it up however they want to cut it up. They can look at the folks in Greenwood, they can cut it up how they want to cut it up. So as long as there is a power over the electoral map, and the Supreme Court Justice, along with the Supreme Court Justices that President Trump appointed, has overturned 90% of the protections that came in the Voting Rights Act. And so now states, before, it was difficult for them to switch and change up the electoral map, because that's one of the major pieces of power that they use to oppress us, is the electoral maps. But now the law has made it easy for them to shift and change the electoral maps in any way that they seem fit. So the question of, do we have the power to vote? I live in the city of Memphis, and I'm going to tell you, it doesn't matter who we vote for in Memphis on a national level, and it never will. And it's made exactly that way, and it's the same way not only in Memphis, but in Jackson, Mississippi, and a lot of other different places are. So no, we don't have the right to vote. Secondly, as a people, do we have the right to control our taxes? As a people, can we decide how much we're paying in taxes, and can we decide exactly how those taxes are allocated? Anyone who's seen recently the documentary that they had of what they did in Mississippi when they took all their welfare money and gave it to Brett Favre and stuff like that, you understand that that's just the tip of the iceberg. So absolutely not. We do not control our money on a state level, and we'll never ask to control anything on a national level because we're only 12% of the population. But we don't control the taxes. We don't control the money. Do we control the laws? No. Do we control what laws are passed? Do we control the sentencing? Because it's funny, because I live right here on the dead end, and when it was the crack epidemic, they was giving people 20 years for 3 and 4 rocks. But now it's an opioid epidemic, and now we got love. Now we got grace. Because I'm going to tell you what, I've never heard of anything, I haven't heard about mass incarceration in effect of the opioid epidemic and other things like that. So that's just the tip of the iceberg. When we don't control the laws and we don't control the sentencing, like we're not in control. So we don't control the vote, we don't control the money, we don't control the laws, and the last thing is, do we control the curriculum that our children learn in school? Can we teach our children about my grandfather? If we were to teach my children, if we were to teach school children about my grandfather, what he stood for and what he did, they would say that that's racist.
Right.
They would say that that's, what do they call it, critical race theory. That's what they would say, and they would prevent it. So as a people, we control none of those 4 things. I'm going to tell you something. Everywhere else in the country, other people do control those things. We live in the United States of America, so that means that each of these states are a sovereign nation. So what we need to do is realize the first place that we're not free. And once we do that, we got someone who we can go to. We got somebody who we can go to. We got somebody who we can go to. Do you understand me? We got someone who we can go to. We go to that same person that Fannie Lou Hamer went to, that same person that Medgar Evers went to, that same person that Martin Luther King Jr. went to, the same person that Frederick Douglass went to. We have a good God that we serve. And I'm going to tell you, God, he works in patterns. You can look at stuff that's happening in the Bible, and you can see a pattern. And this is where we are in the pattern in the history. When God freed the people, when he freed the Israelites, he sent Moses. And Moses came and he freed the Israelites, and he took them out of bondage, and he took them out of oppression. I want you to think in your mind, if we're looking at a pattern, if we look at it, Martin Luther King Jr., you know, my grandfather, people like that, they came in the spirit of Moses, because before them, like, there was bondage. You couldn't look a white person in the face back then. You couldn't do anything, you couldn't say anything. You didn't have the right to vote. You didn't have the right to make decisions and live, so you were not free. You were in a different place. But what did Moses do? Moses got the people out of slavery, but where were they? They were not yet in the promised land. They were wandering. They were wandering. And they were wandering for 40 years. Why were they wandering? They were wandering because they were scared to take the steps to go into the promised land. Because they sent those people out and they brought reports to the giants. And them folks came seeing the giants. Oh, them giants too big over there, y'all. Oh, we can't, no, we can't move on and we can't get to that promised land. Them giants too big. Well, guess what? Guess who came after Moses? Joshua. And Joshua did, in fact, lead his people into the promised land. And at this point, what I need y'all to do is everybody lock into Jesus, lock into Christ, and there will be directions, and there will be us arriving at that promised land one day. Thank y'all.
So Viva Victorian, and then after that, John Span. And when John comes to give remarks, he will unveil, and then the program will be over on this end, and we'll proceed to go to have refreshments. Viva.
Oh wait, who's gonna help me?
Thank you. Oh, I need a. Okay. Thank you, Roy. It's so good to see all of you. You know, I don't come very often. I don't come too often. And so I still am thinking 60 years ago, we wouldn't dare sit or stand out here because people like, do you remember the Birch brothers in their light blue pickup truck with the gun rack? Anyway, things have changed a lot, so that's good to know. So what I want to talk about, yes, Henry, tell me if you can't hear me. Though Benton is not a rich county, it has one of the richest civil rights histories in the whole country. And because so many of its black citizens tried to register to vote in the 60s, Benton was one of the first Mississippi counties to get a federal registrar, and it had one of the highest percentage of black registered voters in the county. That showed about how good it was for people to work together. But it was also one man, Henry Reaves, who was the driving force behind all of this. Now, I was asked to speak about him today because people thought I knew him. I must have known him well because I was here for 2 years and I used to work for him when I was with the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. But in fact, I felt like I hardly knew Mr. Reaves. I was sort of his gopher. He used to tell me where to go, what to do, and whom to see. But he never talked about himself. He never told me what he was thinking and what he wanted. All I knew was that he was a leader of the county, and everybody respected him, even the white folks, who also feared him and wished that he would disappear. It was only 30 years later, in the 1990s, when Roy and I decided to interview people in Benton County about the movement, that I learned about all of the things that Mr. Reaves had done. I learned that when black people in this county turned the voting age, he would go to their houses and visit them and tell them how important it was for them to vote and to become citizens. And it was only after this period that he would not only go to civil rights meetings throughout the South, but he would take individual young people with him because he realized that young people were the key to the future of the movement. He organized what he called a Citizens Club to hide the fact that it was associated with the NAACP in the 20s and 30s, and held meetings even then at Macedonia and Greenwood churches, and he began contacting the Justice Department's Civil Rights Division in Washington to challenge the unfair voting procedures and segregated schools in Benton County. Was there anybody here who remembers Nick Flannery? No. He used to come down from the Justice Department in Washington, and he brought lawsuits to desegregate the schools and get the voting rights done right. So, here is some of the things that the people we interviewed told us about Henry Reaves. Sarah Robinson said, Henry Reaves would come to our church and he would tell us it's important to be a citizen, vote so you could have some voice. And I wanted to be a citizen so I could be considered somebody. Walter Reaves, his nephew, told us, Uncle Henry told me to pay my poll tax, get my poll tax receipt, and go up and register. William Bullock, I don't know if you all remember him,
He said, Henry Reaves, come by and asked us to register to vote, and we did, and that made a total change in my life. And Ellie Stewart, his niece, said, Uncle Henry always told us about voting. When a lot of us were not doing anything, he was out there trying to get people to vote and working on making things better for blacks. And Nelma Tipler, you all remember her, she said, Mr. Reaves got me real interested, and he gave me a sample ballot and said, you promise to go to Ashland next week and register? And I said, I'll go. And I did. Joanne Dorse said, Henry Reaves took us to the voter registration march in Jackson. We knew we'd be arrested, and we were. Most of the marchers were pent up on the fairgrounds for 2 weeks, but Mr. Reaves came down after a few days and picked us up. Jimmy Cathy, who is here today, said, Henry Reaves was a father figure to me and a lot of other young men in the community. He took me to a civil rights meeting in Pontotoc when I was about 13 years old. Jimmy ended up getting a master's degree in education and becoming the first black postmaster in several different Mississippi counties. So this is only a few things that people told us about him. Henry Reaves was a hard-working, independent, straight-talking farmer, born at the height of Jim Crow in this small rural Mississippi county. Through dogged persistence, profound moral direction, and sheer force of will, he led the people of Benton County to a better future. Now, what effect did he have on today? Perhaps his great niece, Crystal Stewart, said it best. She said, even though things are not the way they really should be, they're a lot better. We're not where we ought to be, but thank the Lord, we're not where we used to be.
Amen.
Thank you, Mr. Reaves.
Thank you.
They hear about people in Jackson area, Macomb and the Delta, but oftentimes people from the hill country get neglected. So McLemore and I, along with John and others on the Humanities Council, made the case to the committee, and the committee decided to select Mr. Reaves as one of these people to be honored with this marker today. So I wanted to give you a little bit of background before I bring you on John Spann. John.
How y'all doing?
Hello, how you doing?
Let's give yourselves a round of applause, because this is a great sight to see. All the community coming out, the family coming out to support this effort. I'm going to start by saying that there would be no Mississippi civil rights movement without grassroots efforts like the Benton County movement and people like Henry Reaves. So it's only fitting that we are here today to honor someone who is a giant, but story is unsung. And so that's the whole point of expanding the Freedom Trail, to give a full story of the civil rights efforts that took place in this state. It wasn't just concentrated in Jackson. It wasn't just concentrated in the Delta. There were people all over the state putting their hands on the plow, making progress and pushing for progress to make not only this state a better place for us to live in, but America a better place for us to live in. And that's one thing that I want to say before we wrap up, is that this isn't just a Mississippi story. This is a American story. Mr. Reaves is an American, and he should be honored as an American hero. For so long, we have just been just content with, accepting Black History Month and things, just doing things to honor our people or honor Black civil rights veterans in the month of February. But someone like Henry Reaves, like Medgar Evers, Fannie Lou Hamer, that's 365.
Right.
Because if it wasn't for people like them, America wouldn't be where it is today. That's honestly the truth. If it wasn't for folks like them pushing for equal rights, not just for Black people, but for all people, we wouldn't be here where we are today. And so I want to thank the family for being here. Thank the people on the program for sharing those great words about Mr. Reaves. I want to thank Dr. DeBerry here for even working with us to get us in the community, to make sure that this is something that Benton County wanted. Working with the Hill Country Project has been a pleasure, and so we thank you for your efforts in uplifting the history of the Mississippi Hill Country and specifically Benton County. I want to also thank Visit Mississippi and Maggie Lowry for making this happen as well. Matt, raise your hand. This wasn't just a one-person thing. This was a community, a concerted effort, and so we thank Visit Mississippi for their efforts in making this happen, along with the Hill Country Project. Also, I want to thank my colleague Cam. Raise your hand. She's here today taking pictures. She's our communications director for the Mississippi Humane Council. But anyways, without further ado, I want to bring up all who had a part in making this happen so we can unveil this together. Again, this is not something that I did. This is something that we did. This is the community's marker. This is y'all's marker. So you get Maggie up. We got Dr. DeBerry. You want to bring in your board or anybody who wanted to had a hand in this, come on up, and then we'll unveil it together.
And John, just for the mic. Before you do that, I want to thank again Mr. Joe Batts for coming out this morning and making sure that he made a phone call, and within 15 minutes that grass was cut. That's the kind of power that people in the community has. The other thing I want to mention is the fact that we did not expect, as you stated, this marker to be here this morning because of the wet weather, the rain, but you reached out to some people at the State Department of Highway Department, and while I had some anxiety about whether this thing would be up, when you called me this morning and said this marker was up, I said, what? Yeah. I had no idea. I thought it was going to have a temporary thing and later on, but I want to say again, hats off to the people at the State Highway Department for stepping up to do, and the people in the county who work with them to make sure this happens.
Exactly, yeah. Thank you to MDOT for making this happen. It was a great. We were going to the warehouse this morning to pick up the sign for the temporary thing. It's like, oh, it's already on the way over there. I was like, are you sure the cement's gonna hold? And it's like, yeah, we know it's gonna hold. So I'm glad it's here today. So you can get some people up here to help unveil it for the cameras and stuff. Come on up. Yeah. Y'all want to come up? We'll get your help. No problem. This way. Face this way. All right, we're gonna get a countdown from 5, right? Okay, so 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Thank you all for coming. Again, we want to thank the Southern Poverty Law Center for their...
I encourage these pictures over I want to get a group photo.
Are you here now?